My journey with Mr. Big Boat. Grandma's porch, a place to relax, a place to enjoy. Come visit Grandma's porch. Mr. Big Boat. Hello, y'all. I'm Diana Brienne, Mr. Big Boat. Well, y'all know I normally do my 5-minute wisdom videos, but here lately I've been digging deep into my life and also into other stories from other people that I've known along the way and sharing stories. Now, if I shared about other people, I usually change names and certain details, but not the story itself in order to give out that story. But this one is about me, and maybe I'll change the names around a little bit though in it, but it's a story about me. So I told you in another video how my first marriage came to an end, and prior to that I had had a relationship with a young doctor in love who was about 3 years older than me, and I was in my early 20s. Okay, and then I fast forward, I had a relationship with a man that I did not know that was married, and I did a video on that. So I did not know, and I broke it off once I found out that he was married. And so this one kind of comes somewhere in between all of that. So I had just finished, left my marriage, that was over, and I can't remember, because this is like 30 some years ago, I can't remember quite all of the details, but from what I remember is I met Mr. Big Boat after I had moved into LA, and I told the story about the time that I had a job in LA. This is after the wonderful job. I had left that job, and long story short, I was kind of floundering around with different jobs. I'd left this amazing job and to start a new life, when I got married the first time, and then I went back to the job, but then I left because young doctor in love was still there, and I didn't want to connect with him, and so I left, and so I was kind of working temp agencies type of thing, and this one agency provided us with a beautiful apartment, but long story short, I listened to the suggestion of this crazy woman, sort of, and I ended up giving up the apartment. I had to move out. I ended up having to move back with a friend in Palm Springs, and went back to Palm Springs, and eventually rented a little guest house out in Indian Wells. So I was living in Indian Wells, which is kind of a very nice part of the Palm Springs area. And I was living there. I was trying to rebuild my life, trying to start over. I was living in this little guest house. My mother had actually remarried again, a man that she hardly knew, which I probably could do a video on that itself. And they got married, and so she was now living out there in the Palm Springs area. But I had this little guest house that I was living in. And so I went to the grocery store nearby. It was a very nice grocery store, but a small one. And I was taking my time, and I was going down the frozen food aisle. And there was this man, and he was older, and not like old, but he was, a few years older than me. And he smiled, and I smiled, and we got talking, and he gave me his number, and he asked me if I'd go to dinner. Well, there again, just like the time before, I ended up going to dinner with him that night, and we started dating. Well, he was in the process of buying a yacht, a big yacht, a beautiful brand new yacht. And so he wanted me to fly to Florida with him, and I did, to pick out this yacht. And it was gorgeous. And he said, well, what is the name? What should I call it? And I came up with a name, and that's the name he went with. That is the name that he went with. So I always say he named the yacht after me, but it was really, he named the yacht after the name that I had suggested, because he was really enamored by me. So lo and behold, he and I started really dating, and he would take me out on this yacht. Somehow the yacht got back to California from Florida, and which was kind of a long story in itself. But yes, the married man had come into play at the same time too. Okay, now I remember. So if you go back on the story called My First Palm Springs, My First Marriage, The Married Man, and Washington, D.C., then you will also, so right in this whole mix, because I was dating this man that I did not know was married. And so now I meet this man with the big yacht, who turned out to be, his wife had left him and for another man, but they weren't fully divorced yet, but she had left him. They were going through the divorce process. So he was still seeing his wife, and they had ownership of a lot of things together. So the wife was using the yacht too and all this stuff. So it was kind of a crazy time. But anyhow, he took me on a lot of trips on that yacht. But he was not somebody, I mean, I kind of learned to love him, or learned to like him, I should say. I don't want to call it love. I learned to like him, but it wasn't instant attraction. It wasn't instant chemistry. It wasn't any of that. He was more like a friend, And so we went together. But I knew it had no direction. I knew our relationship was not going to go anywhere. I knew I was not in love with him, and I think he knew that. And in turn, I think when someone knows that you're not in love with them and never will be in love with them, they begin to dislike you. And I think that I don't think he disliked me, but I think he was unhappy with me because we weren't going to get married, that type of thing. And I was enjoying all the beautiful trips. I was enjoying all that. But I remember we had gone, I think it was the Mexican Riviera. We went to La Paz, we went to Acapulco, Manzanilla, and a few others on this yacht. And I remember I got so seasick. I was just, ugh, all the time. And we were out in the middle of the ocean somewhere on this big boat. And, I was in my 20s, and, but I realized that I'd come out of a divorce. I had come out of a relationship prior to that. I now was kind of involved with this man that I did not know was married. So we were kind of seeing each other. But, I kept my distance. I mean, it's not like, even with these relationships, I treated them as friendships. And so, the intimacy level, I kept sort of at bay with these men because, well, that's what Grandma taught me. She said, Grandma always said, if they can get the cow for free, why buy it? That was Grandma that said it, okay? And so God bless my grandma. I love my grandma. She always had wonderful, wonderful sayings. And so I always played a little hard to get. So it wasn't like I was, having all these, relationships. I kept a certain, they would take me, and I think they were enamored by me because I played hard to get. I played hard to get. And so there I was on this yacht. And I remember we went to, we were in La Paz. And I said, we had been out in the ocean for quite some time, and we had docked in La Paz or near La Paz or something like that. I can't remember, but I don't remember the exact location that we docked in, but I said, I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home. I was really, really unhappy. And so he could have kept me. He didn't have to send me home, but he put me on the plane, and away I went back to Palm Springs. And so that was that relationship. And in the meantime, the married man that I talked about in the other video was wreaking havoc with that relationship too, because he didn't want me with anyone else. And he kind of knew about this Mr. Big Boat. And so he would fill my mind up that Mr. Big Boat was really with his ex-wife and all of this stuff. And, to some degree, it might have been true. to some degree. But they were it was all this stuff going on. And, when you are breaking up and going through divorce or going through things, I think the worst thing in the world sometimes is to be dating. That's a time to just really get your own life together and give yourself time to heal and time to make great decisions. And even though it all worked out, I'd had some wonderful, amazing trips on Mr. Big Boat's yacht, I realized that, love was not going to find me at that time. I had to heal first, and I did. I ended up later moving to Newport Beach as part of that healing process, and about 2 or 3 years later, I met my husband. And so sometimes you go through things, you go through learning experiences, and it's easy to judge people and judge other people. And I'm really sharing these stories with you. And I know some people will judge me and say, well, how could you go with a married man? Well, first of all, I didn't know he was married. And the Mr. Big Boat was, his wife had left him, and they did go through a divorce. So, but she had left him prior to me ever meeting him. She had been having an affair with according to him, with some guy for years. And she left him, Mr. Big Boat, for some other guy. So, it was kind of a chaotic at that stage of my 20s with all these different relationships. And yes, I'd had other relationships prior to that, friendships or dating relationships. Some I've told you about, some I haven't. Some were, I'd actually dated a few well-known people. And I have a lot of stories to tell. So more and more, I'm telling stories from my life. Sometimes I have to change the details, the names, and things like that, because I'm not going to say something, my opinion, or give out a lot of information about somebody, because I don't think it's anyone's business. And if they're not here to tell their side of the story, which there's really no side of the story to tell, but, I just don't think it's right. And so I kind of, change some events and some places and some things around a little bit. But yeah, so Mr. Big Boat, I don't think he ever went on to marry again. I don't think he did. And I think he just continued to sail around on his yacht. And I think he, I don't know what he did. I'm sure he dated a lot of different people, but I don't think he ever married again. And of course, my life went on. And later I was to meet my husband. And the dating world, I'm so glad I'm not a part of it. I know I would not do well in the dating world now, because I'm so set in my ways, and and I've been married for so many years. You get used to somebody, and it's very difficult to build a relationship with someone when you're at my age level, because you both have a history. You both have history. And even if it's all good history, you both have a history. You both have attachments. And so older people getting married again, it can be challenging, or even to find someone to meet, because people have issues. They have problems, just like anybody else. But when you're young, you're kind of coming in with a fresh start and a clear start. And sometimes you have nothing, so you build your life together. Often when you're older, you both have things, and you don't want to split it, and you don't want to divide it, and you don't want to jeopardize it, and so you don't want to remarry again. And for me, I'm so grateful that I'm married, and happily married, and for a lot of years. And so I know people that are my age that are out there looking, and I think it's tough. I think it can be done, but I think when you're busy building your own best life is when love finds you. So if I were single at this age, I would just be busy building my own best life and being happy. And if love found me, it would. But fortunately, I don't need to, be out there, because I'm married, and hopefully always will be. But for me, I think, for me personally, I would never, ever want to get married again, because it's too hard at this age. It's too hard to start over. People can start over. And I'll tell you a good story. I had an 85-year-old aunt who, after her husband died, she connected with, I think it was an old high school friend who was 85, and his wife had died, and they got married, and they lived out the rest of their life very, very, very happy. So it can happen. It can happen, okay? So I want to give you the hope for those that want to remarry or find love again after the age of 50, 60, 70, or 80, or whatever. It can happen. And if that's what you want. But for me, I'm just saying I don't want that. I've had a wonderful marriage. And so hopefully my husband and I will be together for the next 100 years and just enjoy everything and have a wonderful life together, and as we have all along. And so, I think when you've had a wonderful relationship like I do, you would never want to step into another relationship. And so, and not that I'm even thinking in that direction, because I'm not, because we have each other. But I'm just saying, people in my age group, who are either divorced or widowed or, anything like that, it's just too challenging and difficult. And for many to step into new relationships, because they have their own history, they have their own assets, they don't want to mix things up, and often they both have families, and the families resent the marriage, and that can cause problems. And so, it would be challenging, I think, to be older and to be out there looking, first of all, and second of all, to consider remarrying. But I have known it to be done, and I have seen very, very successful marriages at older ages. So, but fortunately, I'm happily married, hopefully forever. So that's my story about Mr. Big Boat. And I hope you enjoyed it. I'm digging deep into all my stories, and so may God bless you. And I hope to talk to you soon again. Please like, share, subscribe, and share out my channel, and tell all your friends about it. And I hopefully will talk to you all soon again. Bye-bye. To relax and a place to enjoy. Grandma's porch.